So, the point I'm trying to get at, and the reason we're doing this segment is, I haven't done a men's rights thing in a while, and I kind of want to get back into it because men need role models. They need role models so badly. Okay, the time has come yet again. I must talk about men's rights. We always talk about women's rights. We always talk about trans rights. It is time to talk about men's rights, okay? Men have had it better than most groups, to be honest. They have. But I think oftentimes men's problems tend to get thrown under the rug. Just because they have largely had it better than most groups does not mean that they've had an easy go of it. We do, after all, live in the worst timeline and in the worst economic system. Okay, well, not the worst, but a bad one. Capitalism, not good. We can all agree on that, right? So, men have it rough. Unfortunately, I'll talk a lot about this. I've talked about it before, but I'll say it again. The people who take up the mantle of men's rights don't tend to be very agreeable people. They don't tend to be very kosher people, if you will. They kind of suck, right? They're a bunch of neckbeard, Reddit incel types that just think that women hold the keys to sex. They're like the gatekeepers of sex. They might be red-pilled, black-pilled, whatever. If you don't know what that means, look it up. But anyway, you see this a lot, right? It's kind of a trend. I saw a cat. There was, in fact, a cat behind me. It's kind of a trend. And it's a sad one because there are a lot of men in society that frankly just don't know what to do with themselves. You know, they're told their entire lives that they have to grow up, find a good job, find a wife, be able to make money for that wife, and, and provide, be a male provider, right? And be a father figure, etc. And then you have this problem within capitalism whereby a lot of men aren't able to get a good education, aren't able to get a good job, aren't able to find girls, and so they're lost. They're lost. They've been told their entire lives what they're supposed to do, and they're lost. They don't know what to do because they can't do it, right? Another thing they've often been told their entire lives is to suppress their emotions. I'm one of these people. I know this from personal experience. We're told not to be pussies. We're told not to be little girls. We're told not to show our emotions, not to cry, etc. And it's damaging. And we're never told that therapy is a viable option because mental health care in general is stigmatized in this country. But that goes doubly so for men. If you're a man who gets therapy, and I think this is overall getting better, but in general right now, being a man and getting therapy is seen as kind of a pussy thing to do, which is sad, right? And it's not helped by the likes of Andrew Tate and other red cell / men's rights types that, push a false narrative. The other side of that coin that we'll get to a little bit more is the left pushing their version of, I don't even want to say their version of men's rights, their side of the story, I should say. As I mentioned already, men have generally had it far better than most groups, all right? And we can talk about intersectionally how black men have it worse than a bunch of other groups as a consequence of being both black and male. We're not getting into that, okay? In general, men have had it better than other genders, mainly women, right? We've had it better. We can recognize that. And the left recognizes that as well, and probably a little bit too well, because they don't really tend to pay attention to men's needs and what goes on in men's lives that leads to them being kind of weird and kind of freakish and maybe doing some sussy stuff. Some sussy stuff, which we will currently talk about, okay? This is just one example that I saw recently and the reason we're doing this segment. All right, so your other mom. I saw this Twitter thread recently, and it's a good example of the kind of guy that may seem normal at first, but you quickly find out he's not very well adjusted. So let's talk about it. Your other mom, at Difficult Patty, says, I never do these, but story time. I was polite to a dude at a salsa bar at a restaurant 3 months ago. I already knew, as soon as I read that, I knew where this was going. It was going nowhere good quickly. He asked where I was from and what I did for work, and I told him. He was familiar with the city I lived in and asked which school I taught at, so I mentioned the name. Turns out he was familiar and refs some of my school's football games. Cool. I said, have a good night, and went to my table to have dinner with my sister. I mentioned the conversation to my sister, and she asks if he is a dude wearing a white t-shirt because a dude just scoped us out who was wearing that. I said yes. A minute later, he and his buddy take the table to next to ours. They chat with us for a bit, we exchange first names, finish our dinner, and head home, 1.5 hours away. A couple of weeks go by, and I get an email in my work inbox from the dude asking me to go out sometime. I never gave him my email address, number, or even my last name. I'm slightly creeped out, but don't reply, delete, and move on with my life. Now, here's where you first fucked up, okay? Your first fuck up. If you exchange numbers. Wait, did they exchange numbers? Hold on. Exchange first names, finish our dinner, head home. Okay, so they did not exchange numbers. If you exchange that info and like you can't really easily find the person on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, like reasonably easily. Like you really have to dig like to work emails, right? Don't use the work email. Okay. Sometimes it's better to just let that fish go and catch another one. Okay. You took a step too far there. And being sussy bakas, they are prone to do that. Yeah. We'll keep going. A few weeks later, another email comes and he's recently refereed one of my school's games and he references a couple of our players and compliments my school. He says he's bummed I wasn't at the game. Again, I don't reply, delete, and move on with my life. At this point, you take the L and move on. Okay. You already should have done it. But at this point, it's doubly so. But that's not where it ends. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Today, I am in a casual conversation with my principal and vice principal, and the school admin comes in and says, Patty, your old friend blank is here to say hi to you. I am confused and baffled as to who she could possibly be talking about. Spoiler alert, it's him. It's the guy. Yes, it's the guy. We all know it's the guy. My vice principal says, oh, he came by yesterday, but you were already gone. He asked what time you get off of work. They say his last name and the emails flash before my eyes. I quickly explain who he is and that he is not an old friend of mine, and we decide to tell him I am unavailable. He has already asked what time I get off work, what time I usually leave, and which door I exit from. Oh boy. He goes to his car and waits for me to leave work. My principal goes outside and it appears he decides to drive away, but we see him park down the block to watch for me to leave. We call the school resource officer. One coworker is leaving work and decides to follow him as he begins circling the school in his car, watching to see if I'm leaving from a different exit. Eventually, he pulls over and she rolls down her window and says some choice words to him. He finally leaves. An innocent and polite conversation with a stranger 3 months ago gave me one of the scariest days of my life today. And that's where the story ends. Thankfully, because we've heard it end not as well and not as pleasantly. Or I shouldn't say pleasantly, it's not pleasant, but at least it's not a bad ending, right? The guy didn't do anything crazy. Now, here is where I decided to make this segment. She says, men, be better. Ladies, be careful out there. Now, let's talk about this, okay? Let's talk about the phrase, men, be better. First and foremost, I want to give you guys a quick disclaimer. Nothing that I am saying following this point is any indictment on your other mom, aka @DifficultPatty. That was a very creepy, very unusual situation, and she should not be given any grief for her words here, okay? It's a common first go-to, and I understand the sentiment. I do, all right? I'm not a girl. I've never had to deal with that. We've talked about the one time at a gay bar that I've been kissed on the lips, but I'm over that, and it's not relevant to this conversation. So women deal with that all the time. So men be better is a very common go-to, and you know, it's like, why don't they just be better? You know, why don't men just stop being weirdos? Why don't they just stop being creeps, right? It's so weird. Wow, what is going on here? They're all these creepy weirdo men who end up doing really fucked up shit and hurting women. If not hurting them, at least creeping them the fuck out, right? Here's the thing. Here's what I said. This thread is not a standalone. So many young men are not well adjusted to dating and just general human connection. We need more role models to teach young men how to be social and how intimacy works. I understand why she did it, and I'm not placing any responsibility on her, but I don't like how the takeaway is always just men need to be better. They do, but as leftists, we should be able to recognize a systemic issue and treat it as one. Young men need serious help. Telling individual men to just, quote, be better clearly isn't helping. They aren't being taught how to be well-adjusted adults who can manage their feelings, and many end up like this. The ones who don't quietly suffer as society tells them it's their fault. And who picks up these young men? Conservative groups. They give these men answers. Terrible ones, but answers nonetheless. The left needs to do better at messaging to young men and showing them why our worldview is better, and we'll only do that if we address their problems. None of this is to take away responsibility from the stalker. He's a freak and deserves scrutiny. But if you want to fix this problem, then hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. I know men's rights seems like a meme, but men also suffer under our system. So, the point I'm trying to get at, and the reason we're doing this segment is, I haven't done a men's rights thing in a while, and I kind of want to get back into it because men need role models. They need role models so badly because the current generation of fathers, I'm sorry, most of them are dog shit, okay? They don't know what they're doing. They're raising sons to be psychos, and then these sons grow up, and not even just fathers, right? Sometimes they grow up in bad situations. Sometimes the fathers do their best and they just can't do it, right? We live in a fucked up society, so it's not always the parents' fault. But shit happens. Men grow up and then they do weird fucked up shit like this, okay? We don't want that. We don't need that. And then where do they go? Like I said, the conservatives. The conservatives give them answers. What do the leftists do? We say, you need to be better. You need to own up to what you did. And you need to answer for all the men who did this. You. And then they finger wag at us until we want to vomit. Right? And that's what keeps a lot of men away from the left, right? I mean, there's a meme on the conservative side. And I'm speaking as a former conservative. There's a meme on their side. If you are a white, straight, cis man, you're not welcome on the left. That's the meme. Now, as a white, cis, mostly straight man, I felt very welcomed on the left. I have. And I think the reason for that is because we don't get a lot of them. But why don't we get a lot of them? Because it feels like the left is not addressing our problems, right? So how do we fix this? Like I said, we need more male role models for these men. We need to keep the doors open and make these men understand that, you know, like Gamer G just said, men need to do better, and we need to do better for young men. You can recognize that somebody's behavior is subpar while also recognizing it's not entirely their fault, right? That doesn't take responsibility away from them. They're responsible for their own actions. They're their own person. But, you know, society do be a bitch. It do be society. And recognizing, well, what was the thing that one guy said? Be cruel to systems, be kind to people. Who was it? Somebody say in the chat. I know you guys know who I'm talking about. He passed away from a brain hemorrhage, I think. And if we as the left could embody that more, especially when it comes to men and their problems, I feel like we'd have a lot more success. It's fair to say that society makes men this way, though. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, men are taught to be the tough ones. They're taught not to show their emotions. They're taught that they got to get the job, be the breadwinner, get all the ladies. They have to always make the first move. They always have to be the one with a job. They always have to be the one, you know, working with their hands and not complaining, etc., 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 etc. Right? I'm not saying that men's problems are worse. I'm saying that they're unique, and we need to address them as unique problems as a society, as a whole, and not just tell individual men to be better, sweaty, right? I think we can all hopefully agree that that would be a good route to take. That's all I wanted to say about that. If you are watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Click subscribe if you would like to see more. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. And like I said, be cruel to systems and be kind to people. That's a takeaway. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.